What's up, you guys? Void here, coming back at y'all with another 10 underrated commander cards. We're going to do the same thing that we usually do in no specific order, and these are all from different sets. Just to kind of give you guys an idea, there are a bunch of cards that don't see enough commander play that you might not know about that you might want to throw into one of your good decks. First one we have here, we're going to start it off here with Alchemists Refuge. This is the land from Avacyn Restored. Taps for 1 colorless, but has an activated ability of 2 mana. It is blue-green, so it's a little bit more specific, but you can tap it to make it to where non-land cards you control have flash. You can cast them as if they had flash this turn. You can do this your turn, your opponent's turn. You just have to pay that 2 mana and tap it, so it's really like 3 mana. Only downside of this card is that it is very specific towards blue-green. You have to put it in a blue-green deck. Being restrictive to those 2 colors makes it difficult for this card to see a lot of popularity. I understand that, but having the advantage of timing, I've said this multiple times, it's a special thing to have in this game. And then the next card we have is Soul of New Phyrexia, all the way back from M15. Really similar, and the best comparison is obviously Avacyn Angel of Hope, but this is a little bit more flexible. It's not in white, it's a colorless artifact creature, so you can literally throw this into any deck you want to. The only downside compared to Avacyn is the fact that you have to pay mana in order to make permanents you control indestructible, and that is until end of turn. So your opponents could just easily wait till you run out of mana to pay it, or just exile your creatures. So not as efficient as Avacyn, maybe not as powerful, but definitely a versatile threat when you consider the fact that you also have the activated ability from the graveyard. When you're the most desperate, you can exile it for 5 mana, the same amount of mana, and make all of your permanents indestructible until end of turn. I love options, I love worst case scenarios, experimenting with cards, and this is definitely one of them. And then we have Spirit Bonds. This is yet another card from M15. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay 1 white mana, and if you do, you get a 1/1 spirit creature token. And then you can pay 2 mana and sacrifice a spirit to give another non-spirit creature indestructible until end of turn. So it's very good, probably more so than what people would expect, but it does see some consistent play in decks like Teysa Orzhov Scion, because that deck is all about getting white creatures, little spirits, so that you can then sacrifice and then exile creatures. But really, outside of Teysa, I think this card has some potential. Any sort of deck where you want to play with tokens, any sort of deck where you care about making creatures indestructible, this is a decent card. It's not overcomplicated, but it's definitely going to put its work in. And then the next card we have is Evangel of Helia. This is one of those really cool cards that I'm surprised hasn't seen even more play in Commander, because everybody loves devotion. It seems that when it comes to the gods, when it comes to other creatures like Gary, people love taking advantage of mana symbols, and this is yet another good card to do that with. When it enters the battlefield, you're going to get a number of tokens equal to your total devotion to white. It is a hefty 6 mana, not going to give you any keywords, but it's going to produce a lot of tokens. Throw this into something like Brago, where you can just blink your creatures, have them come back into play. This has the potential to get out of hand pretty quickly. Even if you don't have any other creatures, it's going to get you at least 2 tokens, which 3 bodies for 6 mana is not the best, but it's still something. Then the next card we have is Resolute Archangel. This is yet another crazy card with a pretty decent ETB. Now I can understand why some people don't like this card. It's not super powerful. It's not going to get you out of certain situations, but it really is amazing. Late game, this enters the battlefield and restores your life total, which in Commander is a whopping 40 life. And I must mention again, Brago is amazing with cards like these. Allows you to stay in the game. When your opponents have less than 20 life, you're still there with 40. Even if you don't get to blink it, it's still pretty powerful. And then the next card we have is Jushi Apprentice, that flips into Tomoya the Revealer. Now, Jushi Apprentice is pretty weak, pretty tame. 3 mana, tap it to draw a card. That's about it, but if you have 9 or more cards in your hand, you get to flip it. Now this is the cool part, because once you do flip it into Tomoya the Revealer, you then have an activated ability where you can have a target player draw X cards, where X is the number of cards in your hand. So once you do have 9 cards, then you can only imagine paying that activated ability and then drawing that many over and over again is amazing. My favorite spot for Jushi Apprentice is really any sort of wizard tribal deck, but in particular we're going to talk about Azami Lady of Scrolls, because that deck is all about drawing cards in the first place, and it's easy, super easy in that deck to get a huge hand size. So while it may not slot in easily into every single deck, its power is undeniable. And then we have Monastery Siege. This is one of those cool enchantments from Khans of Tarkir. You have a Khans option, and then you have a Dragons option. If you choose Khans at the beginning of your draw step, you draw an additional card and then discard, so you get extra card draw and a loot effect. But if you choose Dragons, spells your opponents cast are going to have to cost them 2 more if they target you or a permanent you control. So it's awesome card draw. It's pretty consistent. We see a lot of these 3-mana enchantments that are going to give you some sort of advantage when it comes to card draw, and they usually just give you 1 extra card during your upkeep or during your draw step. So that's pretty much going to fall in line with a lot of those. Maybe not as good as something like Heuristic Study, but it does its job. But the Dragons part is really where I love this card. It may not seem like a big deal, but forcing your opponents to pay 2 more mana, even if it is just generic, in order to target your stuff, or even you, is amazing. It's going to deter them from casting a lot of their spells, or even force them to use them on your other opponents. So while it does have the potential to get you some good card draw, if you choose Khans, the Dragons is really where I think this card shines. And then we have Archfiend of Ifnir. From Amonkhet, this card is amazing, and I really didn't think it was going to be that good in Commander when I first saw it, but whenever you cycle or discard another card, you put a -1/-1 counter on each creature your opponents control. You do have a cycling here for 2, so like a lot of other creatures with cycling, worst case scenario, if you don't want it or you don't like it, you get to draw a card, replace it. But that's not why it's good. Why it's really good, at least to me, is the fact that something like Nekosar, where this is starting to see some play, you have the potential of wheeling away, which basically means that you get to discard your entire hand and then draw a new one. You have the potential of discarding a ton of cards. Even with Windfall, all those cards you're discarding, you're putting that many -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures. It is your opponent's, which is amazing. So all your creatures, your Nekosar, they're left alone. That's really where this creature is meant to be in Nekosar, but there are definitely other black decks that want to take advantage of Windfall, Whispering Madness cards, so keep that in mind. And then the next card we have is a Custodial Lich from Conspiracy 2. When it enters the battlefield, like a lot of other creatures in the set, you become the Monarch. If you don't know what the Monarch does, pretty much during your end step, you get to draw a card. So it's kind of like free advantage. Really easy to have this get out of hand in a game. People are going to be fighting for the Monarch because they want to get that extra card draw. The cool thing about Custodial Lich, whenever you become the Monarch, target player sacrifices a creature. So not only do you have the trigger, you're going to get that extra card draw during your end step, but you also have the advantage of forcing your opponents to sacrifice creatures, so even if they want to fight you for the Monarch, once you do take it back, you can just force them to get rid of their creatures, slow them down, and ensure that you get to keep that Monarch, you keep that card draw. It's sort of like a protect the queen mentality with a lot of those cards in the set. And then the last card we have is Citadel of Pain. All the way back in Prophecy, at the end of each player's turn, it deals X damage to that player, where X is the number of untapped lands he or she controls. Really what this does is it deters people from leaving their mana up. It's not going to completely stop them, which is why I like this. I don't like cards that absolutely 100% shut people down and keep them from playing their decks. So while some people will like Winter Orb, Static Orb, this definitely keeps certain control players from doing what they want in certain situations, but it doesn't 100% stop them unless their life total is just way too low. But even then, you're probably going to lose the game anyway. So Citadel of Pain is going to punish people who have answers, whether it's counter spells, removal spells, responses with activated abilities, and that's about it. But if they want to leave up their mana, even if they don't do anything, it's going to cost them 1 life. So unless they have artifacts that they can depend on for their mana, they're really kind of screwed in certain situations, but still one of those cards I absolutely love. Very underrated in red, even if you're not trying to make a chaotic build or any sort of stacks build where you just want to punish your opponents. Citadel of Pain is still pretty sweet. But anyway, guys, that's going to do it for these 10 underrated commander cards. Let me know what you think about them. Let me know if you play these already and if they are really awesome in your decks. As always, you guys have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.